Welcome to Asian American Life. I'm your host, Ernabel Demillo. This month, we're at the Whitney Museum of American Art, checking out their latest exhibit, Programmed: Rules, Codes, and Choreographies in Art. Coming up, we'll have more on the multimedia exhibit behind me. But first, here's what's ahead on our show. The Big Chill, we go close up with America's Iceman. Minnie Roh has the story. Kyung Yoon takes us to Open Style Labs, an innovative organization dedicated to creating functional, wearable clothing for people of all abilities without compromising on style. An update on the new affirmative action policy ruling and how it may affect Asian American students. Rayner Ramirez will have the latest. And Minnie Roh meets a sibling duo determined to restore hard apple cider's reputation as the world's oldest and most favored alcoholic beverage right here in Brooklyn. This and more on Asian American Life. This massive exhibit by Korean-born artist Nam June Paik was considered way ahead of its time back in 1989. Now it's back in New York, and wait till you hear how all the pieces were put back together. It's staggering. 207 TVs stacked on top of one another, 17 feet tall, 41 feet wide, music blaring as different videos play. Nam June Paik's Fin de Siècle 2, first shown at the Whitney in 1989, is back in all its glory, and it is the centerpiece of the museum's latest exhibit, Programmed: Rules, Codes, and Choreography in Art.
Paik really has been one of the pioneers of video art, and this particular work rearranges music videos and other imagery and really uses the television as its material, both in terms of sculptural elements and in terms of content and the signal of the television itself.
To bring this piece back was quite an undertaking. When it was returned to the Whitney years after it was exhibited, it literally came back in pieces, several parts missing.
It was a challenge. I mean, how could we have such a great work of art by such a great artist and not be able to exhibit it? So that started our thinking several years ago about what would be involved, technically, yes, but also philosophically, and how this piece needed to be restored to represent the artist's artistic investment.
We didn't have any idea how the original 10-inch monitors looked like, but this image here shows Paik holding one of these original 10-inch monitors, which gave us an idea how it looked like. And we did an eBay search, and we were actually able to source one of them. It's this quasar here.
Art conservationists Richard Blows and Reinhard Beck spent several years rebuilding Fin de Siècle 2. Richard had worked with Beck in 1989, but still the two faced some serious roadblocks.
There was no real document. It was shown at the Whitney in '89, and then someone bought it and it went to Hawaii, and their house was not big enough to take this 14 or the 17-foot high piece, and so they made a smaller version. So they donated it to us, so we got the smaller version of this piece, which was short, like about 50 TVs maybe.
Right.
And there was no documentation about how it was originally at the Whitney.
The electronics had to be restored, repaired, and sometimes replaced. And finding older model TVs is not as easy as one may think.
These old TVs are not produced anymore. It's called cathode ray tubes, it's CRTs. That's a curved glass TV, which we all know from our childhood.
They also had to find 7 wooden cabinet TVs, ubiquitous in American living rooms in the 70s, not so much in 2018. Thank goodness for eBay.
People would sell them for like $40, and then it would be like in Chicago or something, and we'd have to send this art truck there, which we had to pay like, what, $1,000 or something?
Then they had to figure out how the original all stacked up.
We really had to reconstruct this. And with the scaffolding too, there was only one picture that we had that we found on the internet that showed Paik in front of this piece, and the guy took a flash photograph. And because of that one photograph, we could see the outlines of the scaffolding and what went where.
Finally, they had to make sure the videos playing on the 207 screens matched the tempo and timing of the 1989 version. No one bothered to film the entire exhibit in 1989, ironically, an exhibit devoted to video. All they had to work with was 45 seconds of tape filmed by the original video processor.
So he reproduced the new video processor based on this tape.
Which was only about 45 seconds long.
Very short, but he also did the original one.
So after years of detective work, the pieces are finally in their places, back at the Whitney, just like 1989. And I'm sure this time someone will have a video and a photo or two just in case they want to bring it back 30 years from now. I'm Ernabel Demillo for Asian American Life.
I'm Minnie Roh. You're bound to see an ice sculpture or two as you make the rounds at one of your many holiday parties this season. But what you are about to see are ice sculptures like you've never seen before.
The way we carve is kind of a combination of kind of old school craft with hand tools, chisels and saws, plus the power tools, chainsaws, die grinders and drills.
From bears and swans to cars, Star Wars, even a life-size chessboard. If you can think of it, Shintaro Okamoto can carve it.
We've done, furniture made out of ice, an entire room made out of ice, portrait replicas, interactive material products and designs.
Every day, Okamoto Studio churns out works of art made completely from ice for clients with household names such as Martha Stewart, Uniqlo, and Porsche. Sometimes the pieces are carved from one solid block. Sometimes it's several pieces fused together by slightly melting the ice and letting physics work its magic. These striking conversation pieces all begin life as a massive block of frozen water. Okamoto makes his own ice in these machines that take up to 3 or 4 days to create a giant ice cube that stands 4 feet tall and weighs about 300 pounds. First, Okamoto etches out the sketch. His chainsaw slices into the ice, and like melted butter, it cuts, molds, and finally transforms the frozen mass into what can only be described as a cool piece of art.
Working with ephemeral material like ice is, kind of falls in a realm of something closer like performance art.
Okamoto credits his talent for ice sculpting to his father. A trained sushi chef from Japan, Takeo Okamoto discovered a passion for ice art while pursuing his day job. The elder Okamoto was so passionate about his craft, he moved his entire family to Alaska in the pursuit of ice.
I remember, one boring winter day took us to a frozen lake and took out a chainsaw and cut out a block of ice, pulled it out, and actually sculpted a swan and gave it to a friend for a big house party.
At first, Okamoto says ice carving was just a way for him to spend time with his dad. But soon he was hooked, and the duo entered competitions across the country, from Fairbanks, Alaska to Central Park. In the 90s, they would set up shop in Queens, New York, where they carved their way through the heart and hearts of New York City. The earliest record of ice making dates back to 600 BC, when the Senshi warrior farmers of northwest China would flood their fields in the winter and harvest the ice to use in the summer. In the 1600s, hunters and fishermen in Harbin, China, along the Russian border, would carve ice lanterns for dark winter nights. To this day, there is an international ice and snow sculpture festival in Harbin that draws thousands of artists from around the world. Depending on the subject, ice creations can take anywhere from an hour for this swan to an entire day and more, as in the case of this life-size replica of an elephant. And while these beautiful carvings stand tall and proud for many hours, eventually, as ice is wont to do, it melts into a puddle of water. True to his Asian upbringing, though, Okamoto is philosophical, almost zen, in the temporary nature of his craft.
When you experience something that's going away right in front of you, I think makes that present moment that much precious. And I think it's that kind of relationship with memory and presence and time that is clearly art of its own.
I'm Minnie Roh for Asian American Life.
It's tough enough to pick out just the right outfit to match your shoes or the temperature outside. But imagine how you'd put on a jacket if you can't use your arms, or a pair of pants if you're in a wheelchair. Well, some of the brightest creative minds are tackling those challenges, designing accessible clothes for people of all abilities. Irene Park has been in a wheelchair for the past 4 years, ever since a car accident left her partially paralyzed.
I suffered a spinal cord injury, and that's paralyzed me from like the waist down. Yep. So I'm now a full-time wheelchair user. It's been a big adjustment, but you know, being that it's a recent disability, you know, there are a lot of aspects of life where, you know, I haven't quite figured out, you know, both the physical aspects of disability as well as like where do I like mentally and ethically stand in terms of being a young disabled Asian woman.
For a once active young woman, the adjustment has not been easy, and one of the daily challenges she faces is not only the mechanics of getting dressed, but having to compromise her sense of style.
I used to like wearing like mini skirts and long blazers, and you know, I can't really wear those things because if the skirt is too short, then everyone can, you know, look right up my skirt, or if my blazer is too long, it's gonna get caught in the wheels.
Last year, a friend connected her with a nonprofit organization called Open Style Lab, whose mission is to create fashionable and accessible clothes for people living with disabilities.
We think if style is a barrier to your greater independence or self-expression, those are the challenges that we're trying to look at to be more innovative about.
Grace Jun is the executive director of Open Style Lab, in partnership with the Parsons School of Design, where she is an assistant professor of fashion. She runs a 10-week program that brings together creative problem solvers from different industries to collaborate on making stylish and functional clothes for people with disabilities.
It's been quite extraordinary adventure of finding people who are not just qualified with the skill sets, but are willing to kind of step out of their comfort zone and to share some of their skills in an interdisciplinary way. So for occupational therapists to understand and work with a designer, as well as with a material scientist to work with someone who's in physical therapy.
Last year's team created a pair of fashionable gold-tinted pants for Irene with hidden zippers down the side.
I wanted to have a pair of pants I could undress and dress easily in my chair for, you know, going to the bathroom and whatnot. It really became a tool for me to have like one less huge thing to worry about when I wanted to go out with my friends or go visit a museum, you know, and it really liberated me in a lot of ways.
What do they use in therapy when they help you to stand?
This year, Open Style Lab collaborated with Riverside Rehab, where many of the long-term patients have different disabilities based on aging.
We see aging as part of the human life cycle, and regardless of what age you are, it shouldn't be limited to the products that are not accessible to you outside of the market scope. And also, I think just in education-wise, we can kind of change some of the mindsets, especially working with some of the most brightest designers here at Parsons.
Irene has since joined the Open Style Lab team as managing editor, contributing her skills as a writer and editor to advocate against the stigma faced by people with disabilities, a condition that affects nearly 40 million Americans, or about 12% of the population.
Understanding that it's not just an experience that someone else is going through, that it is something that everyone should be cognizant of, even if they're not experiencing the acute effects of having a disability, or knowing someone close to them with a disability.
There is a huge market that is being underserved. At least someone in your family has experienced surgery, or they've gone through an injury, or you have an elderly in the families. Most of the concerns that I've seen that are related to products or clothes are very related to just life and the things we go through.
Grace John says she hopes that Open Style Lab will keep changing the conversation around design education to make more businesses and individuals understand the opportunities here for people of all abilities. I'm Kyung Yoon for Asian American Life.
The trial challenging Harvard's admissions policy lasted 3 whole weeks in October, but the trial is far from over.
The plaintiffs, Students for Fair Admission, or SFFA, alleges that Harvard discriminates against Asian Americans. Harvard says race is just one of many factors they look at when admitting students. Irene Park, president of the Harvard Asian American Alumni Alliance, was at the trial.
Being in the courtroom and seeing much of the trial made even clearer to me what SFFA's mission here is. It is to end race-conscious admissions, and that is the remedy that they have asked for in their lawsuit. They're claiming that Harvard discriminates against Asian Americans, but what they are really looking for here is an end to race-conscious admission.
What was notable, she says, was who was missing.
One of the interesting things about this trial is that these plaintiffs are nowhere to be seen. They did not testify. He did not testify. They were not named. Their application files were not put forward. So it is almost impossible to even say whether they have a valid claim of discrimination.
We never actually saw the students who claimed that they were discriminated against. And we were told that they were going to remain anonymous, but we never heard from them. We never heard directly about the impact of this suit on them. Instead, we just heard from attorneys and from statisticians about their models.
NAACP legal defense attorney Kara McClellan delivered the closing remarks at the trial. She says anonymous plaintiffs are unusual.
One has to wonder what would compel somebody not to be willing to come forward to speak about their experience if they feel so strongly to bring a lawsuit.
Even the man who led the lawsuit against Harvard did not testify. This is SFFA President Ed Bloom appearing on Fox News.
College administrators and bureaucrats and admissions officers are wed to the idea that your race should be used to help you, or your race should be used to harm you in your admissions process.
Asian American students make up about 22% of Harvard's freshman class, and the majority of Harvard's student body are now people of color. Several testified at the trial.
They talked about the importance of having people of all different kinds of backgrounds in their classes. Some of them did not have high scores and grades, but clearly the admissions office saw something in that file and that they thought would make them wonderful students and future leaders.
Different student groups attended trial, and so that was palpable. And on some days, because there was, standing room in the back of the court, it was packed to that extent. And in some days there were overflow rooms because there was such a strong turnout of students wanting to provide support for other students testifying or just wanting to be present and be a witness to what was going on.
I think there's a historical tactic to try to pit minorities against each other to the benefit of the majority and those who have held privilege. And the research has shown that if you eliminate race-conscious admissions, the primary beneficiary are those who've always been privileged in admissions and not the Asian American students and students of color.
U.S. District Court Judge Allison D. Burroughs is expected to make a decision early next year. Regardless of the trial's outcome, many predict this case may go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Students for Fair Admissions did not reply to a request to interview Asian American plaintiffs they represent. In the meantime, if you're an Asian American Who believes that Harvard or other Ivy League admissions discriminated against you? We'd love to talk to you. Hit us up on our Facebook page at Asian American Life. This is Rayner Ramirez.
I'm Minnie Roh. This may look like an ordinary bottle of apple cider, pressed in one of the many apple orchards that you can find in upstate New York. But take a closer look, because in this bottle of apple cider lies a deeper story about lost traditions, new beginnings, and an unquenchable thirst to bring the art of making apple cider to the Big Apple and beyond. Nestled deep in this idyllic countryside in New Paltz, New York, a quiet revival is brewing.
It's supernatural. This is the most natural alcoholic beverage you can put in your body.
We're talking about apple cider, but not the kind you can find on supermarket shelves. Brooklyn Cider House founder Peter Yee makes hard apple cider the old-fashioned way, fruit handpicked from the apple tree and fermented.
I've had hundreds of ciders in the past, and it really wasn't exciting to me.
For 25 years, Yee was a wine taster and thought he had hit the career jackpot.
My job was to go around, meet incredible producers, and drink the very best wines.
It was on one of those wine tasting trips in 2014 to the Basque Country in Spain when he stumbled across apple cider, and that's when the magic happened.
When I put that glass to my lips, it was life-changing. It really took me a second to realize that this is what I want to do.
Yee was so inspired that he quit his job, convinced his sister to also quit her job as a school teacher, and they plunged headfirst into the cider-making business.
This is something that, New Yorkers and Americans haven't seen. It seems to fit perfectly because there are a lot of people right now who are really into things that are very natural, raw.
Apple cider is the oldest alcoholic beverage known to mankind. The ancient Romans drank it, as did the settlers to this country. It was more popular than beer or water, which was considered unsafe to drink. Most backyards until the turn of the century had an apple tree or two. Then, during Prohibition, all the apple trees were cut down to discourage drinking. Orchards began planting sweet apples that were better suited for eating. So when Yee went searching for his cider apples, he was hard-pressed to find what he needed.
We knock on the door and can we get some cider apples? No. No one had these apples. So we had to plant because we couldn't find it. We now have 8,000 trees devoted to just cider varieties.
As a Korean American who grew up eating kimchi and fermented soybean paste, plus his years working in the wine industry, Yee was already familiar with fermentation and its process. Just like grapes for wine, the apples for cider are harvested from the orchard, pressed, and then brought to his restaurant in Brooklyn, where it spends 6 months in fermentation tanks, and then transferred to wooden barrels imported from Spain for the final step. Okay, so tell me about these barrels that we have here.
So these barrels are 80-year-old chestnut barrels, and it's been used for all of its 80 years for cider production. It spends about a year of its life in the barrels, and it's where the cider gets to rest.
At the Brooklyn Cider House, diners partake in the Basque region cider experience that had captivated Yee. In between food courses, the tap is opened, allowing guests to catch the cider straight from the barrel. Cheers. Interactive fun aside, Yee says one of the qualities he loves about hard apple cider is its ability to pair with virtually any food group.
Works well with salads, fish, pork, lamb, beef, kimchi, Szechuan, Thai, Vietnamese, Mexican. You tell me one wine that can work with all the foods that I just mentioned. I can pick out one bottle of cider and it'll work well with all of that.
Plus, apples are a natural digestive.
There's something in fermented apples that actually helps in your digestion. So whatever it is, even if it's very fatty, it actually aids your digestive system. So it does really feel different.
Yi and his sister say they know it could be a long time before the public perception of apple cider as a highly sweet and carbonated drink is erased. But they are determined to restore hard apple cider's reputation as the world's oldest and most favored alcoholic beverage, one glass at a time.
As the saying goes, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. I'll drink to that. I'm Minnie Roh for Asian American Life. That's our show for now. Be sure to check out Programmed at the Whitney. It'll be up until April 2019. I'm Ernabel Demillo. We'll see you next time on Asian American Life.